Vincent Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office on the 47th floor, gazing at the sprawling city beneath him. From above, it looked less like streets and buildings and more like an intricate circuit board live, buzzing, constantly moving. The morning sun caught the sharp angles of his perfectly styled dark hair and the tailored navy suit that draped his lean frame with effortless authority. At only 35, Vincent had turned Sterling Tech into a global empire. What began as a college dropout's wild idea had grown into a multi-billion-dollar powerhouse, and with it, he had become one of the youngest billionaires in the world. A sharp knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. His assistant entered without waiting. "Mr. Sterling, your 10 o'clock is here, the photo shoot with Vanessa for Tech Weekly." Vincent nodded, his expression unreadable. Vanessa Laurent, French supermodel, dazzlingly beautiful, and for the past 3 months, his official companion. Like all the others before her, she knew the arrangement. Glamorous evenings, polished appearances, no strings, no expectations. The shoot unfolded with mechanical precision. Vincent posed beside Vanessa in the sleek glass-walled conference room. Their bodies angled toward each other. His hand rested lightly on her waist. Her smile sparkled on command. "Perfect chemistry," the photographer exclaimed. "You two look absolutely made for each other." Vincent returned the practiced smile that had landed him on countless magazine covers. To the camera, it was flawless. Inside, he felt nothing. Only the same hollow ache that had followed him year after year, quarter after quarter, relationship after relationship. When it was over, Vincent slipped back into his office, craving a moment of solitude. That's when he noticed it his prized espresso machine. The Italian masterpiece, worth more than most people's cars, had finally broken down. Silent, useless, his assistant had left early for a dental appointment, leaving Vincent truly alone, for the first time in months. He stared at the dead machine, a small but strangely piercing frustration rising in him. For all his success, all his wealth, the silence of the room pressed in, making him realize the truth he had long ignored. The empire he had built was thriving. But inside, Vincent Sterling was breaking. When had he become so dependent on others? For the simplest tasks. Vincent couldn't remember the last time he had done something as ordinary as buying his own coffee. The thought struck him as both pathetic and strangely liberating. Without thinking twice, he grabbed his wallet and keys. For once, no chauffeur, no assistant, no meticulously curated plan, just him. He would solve this crisis himself. The city felt different at street level. The hum of traffic, the chatter of passers-by, the shifting rhythm of everyday life. Fit was a world he had almost forgotten. After walking 3 blocks, he spotted it, a narrow storefront with a weathered sign. Above the door, pages and dreams. Through the window, he glimpsed rows of books stacked like treasure, and in the back, a small cafe corner with mismatched tables and chairs. The bell above the door chimed softly as he stepped inside. The air was alive with warmth. Coffee, old paper, a trace of cinnamon. It smelled like comfort and history, like a place built on love rather than profit margins. Vincent had almost forgotten places like this existed. Behind the counter, a woman looked up from the book she was reading. She slipped a finger between the pages to mark her spot, then met his gaze. For a moment, Vincent forgot how to breathe. Her chestnut hair caught the afternoon light like strands of bronze, and her amber eyes seemed to look straight through him past the billionaire, past the flawless suit straight, into the man he had buried beneath all of it. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was soft, lilting with a faint accent, musical yet grounded. "I need coffee," Vincent replied, suddenly aware of how out of place his $3,000 suit looked in this cozy worn-in shop. Luna Martinez studied him with quiet curiosity, tall, striking, with an aura of wealth that was impossible to hide. She had seen men like him before, investors searching for rare first editions to display like trophies, their arrogance filling the room before their voices even did. But this man seemed different. His posture radiated power, yet something in his expression, something unguarded, felt almost fragile. "What kind of coffee?" she asked, gesturing toward the small chalkboard menu. Vincent froze. He realized with a jolt of embarrassment that he had no idea. His assistant had always ordered his coffee. At restaurants, he deferred to sommeliers. Every choice, big or small, had been outsourced. Now, faced with the simplest of questions, he stood exposed. "I honestly don't know," he admitted at last. His perfect composure cracked just enough to let the truth slip through. "Something strong. I've been drinking the same Italian espresso for 5 years. Then the machine died today." Luna tilted her head, a faint smile tugging at her lips. There was no mockery in her expression, only intrigue. "Rough day when your coffee machine dies," she said gently. For the first time in years, Vincent Sterling felt like he was in unfamiliar territory. And instead of resisting it, he found himself strangely drawn in. "Let me guess," Luna said, her lips curving in amusement. "You're the type who has someone else do the grocery shopping too." There was no malice in her tone, just gentle teasing. For the first time in weeks, Vincent smiled. A real smile, not the carefully practiced one he wore for cameras. "That obvious, the suit gives it away," she replied, beginning to prepare a drink. "Also, the way you're standing like you're afraid the books might attack you." Vincent glanced around. She was right. He hovered near the counter, as though the cozy intimacy of the shop might somehow stain him. "I don't spend much time in bookstores," he admitted. "That explains the lost expression," Luna said, steaming. "Milk with smooth, practiced motions. So, what do you do when you're not being defeated by coffee machines?" "I run a tech company," Vincent answered carefully, keeping it vague. Sterling Tech was practically a household name, but he wasn't ready for the recognition or the change in tone that usually followed. Luna didn't press. Instead, she focused on the foam swirling in the cup, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Ah," she said at last, "one of those. Let me guess, you disrupted some industry, and now you're changing the world from a glass tower somewhere." The accuracy of her words unsettled him. "Something like that," he admitted. She finished the drink and slid it across the counter. "Here, cappuccino with an extra shot. Strong enough to handle whatever crisis sent you wandering into the real world." Vincent took a cautious sip and paused. The flavor surprised him. Rich, layered, alive in a way his expensive espresso machine never managed. "This is incredible. Where did you learn to make coffee like this?" "YouTube and practice," Luna said with a small shrug. "Same place most people learn when they can't afford to hire experts." The words lingered between them. Not sharp, not accusing, just honest. Vincent studied her more closely now. A simple green sweater, well-worn jeans, her chestnut hair pulled into a practical ponytail. No flashy jewelry, only small silver earrings that caught the light when she moved. She was beautiful effortlessly, quietly beautiful in a way untouched by artifice. "What are you reading?" he asked, noticing the paperback she had set aside. Luna held it up. Love in the Time of Cholera, by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. The spine was creased, the cover softened by countless reads. Rereading, actually. Some books get better every time. You visit them, in Spanish, Vincent observed, noting the original language edition. Her expression softened. My grandmother's influence. She always said, stories lose something in translation, that you have to experience them in the language the author dreamed them in. Something stirred inside Vincent then. A subtle shift, a recognition. He couldn't remember the last time he had met someone who spoke with such quiet conviction. Someone whose depth wasn't wrapped in layers of ambition, networking, or polished facades for the first time in years. Vincent Sterling felt like he was standing at the beginning of a story, one that might finally matter. That's beautiful, Vincent murmured, his gaze flicking to the worn paperback in Luna's hand. I can't remember the last time I read fiction. Too busy disrupting industries. Luna teased, a small smile tugging at her lips. He smirked faintly. Something like that. Her eyes narrowed playfully. Then tell me, what's the last book you read for pleasure, not business? The question caught him off guard. Vincent searched his memory, but came up blank. College, probably, he admitted, almost sheepish. Luna's smile softened, touched with pity, though not unkind. That's tragic. Stories are how we understand ourselves. How we learn we're not alone in whatever we're feeling. Vincent leaned forward slightly. And what are you feeling? The question surprised even him. He wasn't used to caring about the inner world of strangers. Luna considered, her amber eyes thoughtful. Lately, restless, like I'm waiting for something to begin, but I don't know what. Something stirred in him at her words. He drained the last sip of coffee slowly, reluctant to let this fragile connection slip away. But the moment pressed. Forward, how much do I owe you? $3.50, Luna replied. Then she paused, her gaze sharpening as she really looked at him. Recognition flickered across her face. White-ear Vincent Sterling. He braced himself for the inevitable, the sudden shift. The calculating expression, the hunger for what his name could provide. But none of that came. Instead, Luna leaned across the counter, curiosity burning in her eyes. Can I ask you something, Vincent? Hesitated. Go ahead. With all that money, all that success, all those beautiful women I see you with in magazines. Her voice softened, almost fragile. Are you happy? The question struck him like a physical blow. Not because it was rude, it wasn't. Not because it was unexpected, but because no one had ever asked. Not his board of directors, not his so-called friends, not even the women draped on his arm in glossy spreads. Are you happy? The simplicity of it terrified him. His voice faltered. Words failed. Luna didn't press. She only watched the storm of emotions ripple across his face. Confusion, vulnerability, and something dangerously close to fear. You don't have to answer, she said gently. But maybe you should ask yourself that question sometime. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Vincent reached into his wallet, set a crisp $10 bill on the counter, and turned toward the door. His movements felt strangely heavy, as though the air itself resisted letting him leave. Mr. Sterling, Luna's voice stopped. Him. He turned, and there she was, holding out his change. The coffee was $3.50. You gave me too much. In his world, no one ever mentioned when he overpaid. Generosity was expected. Gratitude was scripted. Every gesture carried an unspoken transaction. But this woman, with her simple sweater and earnest gaze, offered back what others would have pocketed without thought. "Keep it," he said softly. "For what?" she asked, brows furrowing. "For making coffee and asking uncomfortable questions." Luna tilted her head, her amber eyes steady. "That's just Tuesday for me." Despite himself, Vincent smiled. A real one. Not the polished mask the world knew, but something genuine, fragile, and alive. For the first time in a long while, he felt the stirrings of something new. "For making me realize," Vincent said softly, "that I don't know the answer to the most important question anyone's ever asked me." He left pages and dreams and walked back toward the steel and glass fortress of his office tower. But Luna's question trailed him like a shadow. "Are you happy?" The words followed him into the elevator, whispered in the silence of his vast office, echoed through the boardroom as he approved yet another acquisition that would fatten his empire. That night, alone in his penthouse, high above the city, Vincent Sterling, billionaire CEO, master of the universe, sat in a designer chair worth more than most people's annual salary and finally admitted what he had long buried. He didn't know who he really was beneath the armor of success, and for the first time in years, he wanted to find out. The next morning, as sunlight spilled across the avenues, Vincent found himself slowing his stride outside the weathered sign of Pages and Dreams. He glanced through the window, half hoping to see a flash of chestnut hair, half terrified that he might. But he kept walking. 3 days passed before he gathered the nerve to return. He had tried to drown her question in the noise of board meetings, in the hollow applause of a charity gala where Vanessa clung to his arm like jewelry. Yet whenever the noise faded, Luna's voice rose again, as insistent as a song he could not forget. "Are you happy?" The bell chimed as he stepped back into the bookstore. Luna looked up from arranging a display of books, surprise flickering in her amber eyes. She straightened, brushing her hands against her green sweater. The coffee machine still broken. Vincent almost laughed. "Actually, I had it repaired." He hesitated, then added, "I came for something else." She waited, quiet, patient, not pushing, not prying. That restraint alone set her apart. In his world, silence was always filled by flattery, by demands, by people desperate to impress. "I've been thinking about your question," he said finally, "about happiness." Her gaze sharpened, though she said nothing. "I realized," Vincent exhaled, his voice low. "I don't remember the last time I did something simply because I wanted to, not because it made sense for business, or polished my image, or built the empire higher." Luna tilted her head, considering him. "So," she asked softly, "what do you want to do?" Vincent's eyes swept the shop, seeing it differently this time. The handwritten recommendation cards tucked between the shelves, the battered armchair tucked in the reading corner, the sunlight spilling onto potted plants thriving in the windowsill. Everything felt alive here in a way his sterile world never did. "I want to understand this place," he admitted. "Why someone would choose books over profit margins. Why you ask me that question instead of just taking my money and saying thank you." Luna's lips curved, not into a smile, but something gentler. "Because money without purpose," she said, "simply is just numbers on a screen." Her words settled into him like a stone sinking into deep water, quiet, undeniable, impossible to ignore. And Vincent Sterling realized, with startling clarity, that his world of numbers had never felt emptier. "And you looked like someone who..." Had forgotten that, Luna added, gently, as if to soften the weight of her words. She prepared him another cappuccino, this one crowned with a delicate leaf pattern etched into the foam. Vincent carried it to the reading corner, sitting stiffly in his immaculate suit, a picture of formality against the cozy, worn-in backdrop of mismatched furniture and sagging bookshelves. "Tell me about your grandmother," he asked suddenly, surprising even himself with the personal nature of the question. Luna's face brightened instantly. "Abuela Rosa. She came here from Colombia with nothing but her stories and her recipes. She cleaned offices at night, took English classes during the day, and never once stopped believing that books could take you anywhere. Is that why you work here?" Vincent asked. "Partly," Luna said, curling her legs beneath her in the armchair. "I'm also a writer, or trying to be. This job lets me stay close to stories while I figure out my own." Vincent leaned forward, genuinely intrigued. "What do you write about?" "People like you," she replied with a teasing little smile. His brows rose. "People like me. Characters who have everything they thought they wanted," she explained, "but don't really know who they are underneath it all." The observation struck too close to home. It stung. He covered the wound with a wry comment. "Sounds depressing." "Not depressing," Luna corrected softly. "Human. The most interesting stories happen when people realize they need to change." They talked for over an hour. Vincent learned that Luna had studied literature at a community college while working 2 jobs, that she sent money home to her mother every month, that she dreamed of publishing a novel, though doubt gnawed at her in return. Vincent revealed things he rarely allowed himself to think about, let alone say aloud. How he still missed his father, who had died while Vincent was in college. How every milestone in Sterling Tech's meteoric rise felt hollow without someone to share it with. How he sometimes felt as though he were just a character in a story someone else had written. As closing time approached, Luna set down the book she had been holding. "You know what you should do." "What?" Vincent asked, wary. "Take a week off. No meetings, no phone calls, no photo shoots with supermodels. Just exist. As Vincent the person, not Vincent the brand." He laughed, but the sound was hollow. "I can't just disappear for a week." "Why not?" she challenged. "You have a board of directors, vice presidents, hundreds of employees. If they can't run the company without you for 7 days, then you haven't built a company, you've built a crutch." Her words landed with sharp precision. "You think I won't do it?" Vincent asked, his pride rising to defend itself. "I think," Luna said calmly, "that you're scared to find out who you are when you're not being the CEO of Sterling Tech." That cut deeper than he expected. Vincent rose abruptly, stung by the quiet audacity in her tone. "You don't know anything about my life." Luna didn't flinch. She remained seated, steady, unshaken by his reputation or the sharp edge in his voice. Her amber eyes held his with quiet defiance, and for the first time in a long while, Vincent Sterling realized he had met someone who wasn't intimidated by him at all. "You're right," Luna said softly, her amber eyes steady. "I don't know the details of your life. I only know what I've seen in magazines and what I've seen in 2 conversations. But I know what fear looks like. And you're wearing it right now." That evening, Vincent sat in his penthouse. The city sprawled beneath him, glittering like a field of earthbound stars. Vanessa was in Milan for a fashion show. He had declined 3 dinner invitations. The silence pressed against him, heavy and suffocating. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through his contacts. Hundreds of named CEOs, celebrities, politicians, all powerful, all useful, but not one he could call just to talk. Not one who would ask how he was, rather than what he could do for them. Luna's words returned, sharp and unyielding. You're scared to find out who you are when you're not the CEO. When had he become a man afraid of his own company? The next morning, Vincent picked up his phone. Clear my calendar for the next week, he told his assistant. A stunned pause. Sir, you have the board meeting Thursday and the investor presentation. Reschedule everything, Vincent said firmly. Tell them I'm taking personal time. The shock in her voice was palpable. In 5 years, Vincent Sterling had never taken an unscheduled day off, let alone a full week. His next call was to his head of operations. You can handle things for a week without me, of course. But Vincent, are you all right? I'm fine, he lied. I just need some time to think. The week began awkwardly. Monday morning, Vincent woke at his usual time, followed his usual routine and then realized he had nowhere to be. No meetings, no decisions, no image to maintain. So he walked miles through neighborhoods he had never noticed, despite living in the city for over a decade. He ate at tiny restaurants where no one recognized him. He sat in parks, watching people live their ordinary, extraordinary lives. By Wednesday, his steps led him back to pages and dreams. The bell chimed as he entered. Luna didn't look up from the stack of books she was shelving. How's your week going? She asked casually. Weird, Vincent admitted. I went to a movie yesterday, alone, in the middle of the afternoon. I can't remember the last time I did that. Her lips curved. What did you see? Some independent film about a man who inherits his father's bookstore. His expression softened, almost embarrassed. It made me cry, which was mortifying. Luna finally looked at him, her amber eyes warm. Stories have a way of sneaking past our defenses when we're not expecting it. A moment later, Vincent was beside her, stacking books onto the shelves. His $30,000 watch glinted absurdly as he alphabetized romance novels, looking oddly out of place, and yet, for the first time in years, completely at ease. Can I ask you something? Vincent's tone was cautious. Sure. Why aren't you afraid? Of what? Of me? Of what I could do for you or to you? Luna tilted her head, considering the question with the same calm she always carried. Seriously, because I've seen what happens when people get lost in someone else's power instead of building their own. She leaned against the counter, eyes thoughtful. My cousin married a wealthy man, thinking it would solve everything. Instead, she disappeared, bit by bit, trying to be who she thought he wanted. She lost herself completely. And what do you want? Vincent asked, his voice lower now, almost reverent. To write stories that matter, Luna said without hesitation. To help people feel less alone. To build something that's mine. Then her gaze met his, steady and unflinching. What about you, Vincent? Not what looks good in magazines, not what's expected. What makes you happy? That night, Vincent sat in a room he almost never entered, his study. The shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, packed with books he had collected but never touched. They were trophies, not companions. On impulse, he pulled one at random. 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He opened the first page. Hours vanished. He read of magic woven into reality, of families bound by love and haunted by solitude, of legacies and losses that felt impossibly close to his own hollow empire. By dawn, the book lay open in his lap, and Vincent felt something shift quietly, irrevocably. It was as though a locked door inside him had been pushed open, revealing possibilities he had long forgotten. Stories could show him truths no quarterly report ever could. The next day, Vincent returned to Pages and Dreams, the book in hand. "You read it," Luna said, noticing the dazed, sleepless look in his eyes. "I couldn't put it down," Vincent admitted. "I get it now what you meant when you said stories help us feel less alone." A slow smile spread across her face, softening her features. "Welcome back to the world of stories, Vincent Sterling." They sat in the reading corner, coffee cooling beside them, and talked for hours. About the Boondia family, about solitude and fate, about love tangled with loss. To his own surprise, Vincent found himself offering insights he didn't know he possessed. Thoughts about isolation, about the hunger for connection, about how success meant nothing if it was built on loneliness. "You know," Luna said after a pause, "you're different when you're talking about something you actually care about." "Different how?" "Less polished, more real." "Is that good or bad?" "It's honest," she said simply, "and honesty is the rarest luxury of all." His week away from Sterling Tech ended, but something fundamental in him had shifted. Back at the gleaming tower, Vincent sat in meetings, nodding through acquisition strategies and investor reports. Yet his mind kept drifting not to profit margins, but to Luna's words about characters and change. For the first time in years, he wondered, was he still the protagonist of his own story, just playing a part someone else had written for him? During conference calls, Vincent found his mind wandering not to market forecasts, but to passages from Garcia Marquez about solitude and its unbearable weight. When Vanessa returned from Milan, she swept into his penthouse with stories of fashion weeks, champagne parties, and whispered scandals. They attended a charity gala together, Vincent in his black tie armor, Vanessa radiant on his arm. Cameras flashed. Smiles froze. Applause rang hollow. "You're distracted tonight," Vanessa murmured as they posed for photographs. "I was just thinking about a book I read," Vincent said automatically. Vanessa's laughter sounded as brittle and cold as crystal. "Since when do you read fiction? You once told me novels were for people who couldn't handle reality." Had he really said that? The memory surfaced, and with it, a sharp sting of shame. How small he had been in his certainty. That weekend, Vincent found himself at Pages and Dreams again. Luna sat cross-legged in the children's corner, reading aloud with animation and joy. The kids leaned forward, wide-eyed, laughing at voices she gave the characters. Vincent watched from a distance, mesmerized, not just by her voice, but by the ease with which she created connection, something he had spent millions trying to buy through branding. When the children left with their parents, Luna approached him, raising a brow. "You keep coming back. Are you sure I'm not just stalking my friendly neighborhood barista?" he asked with a small smile. "Maybe you are," she teased. "What if I told you I'd like to have dinner with you?" Her amber eyes narrowed slightly, testing. "This isn't a networking thing, right? You're not going to spend the evening talking about market disruption and synergistic opportunities. I promise no business talk. Just two people, a meal, a conversation." "Where were you thinking?" His reflex almost betrayed him. A mental list of 6-month reservation restaurants flickered through his mind. Places designed to impress, where every table was a stage. But then he looked at Luna in her worn jeans and simple sweater, unadorned yet luminous, and realized how wrong that would be, actually. Vincent said slowly, "I was hoping you could recommend somewhere real." The date Luna chose a small Mexican restaurant in her neighborhood, the kind with mismatched chairs, scuffed wooden tables, and menus written daily in chalk. The air smelled of lime and cilantro, of sizzling carne asada and homemade tortillas. Families laughed at nearby tables. Music hummed softly from a battered speaker. Vincent felt overdressed, even in his most casual jacket, but the warmth of the space disarmed him. It was alive in a way no Michelin-starred dining room could ever be. Over plates of fresh ceviche and tamales, he leaned forward. "Tell me about your writing." Her eyes lit up, as if someone had struck a match inside her. "I'm working on a novel. It's messy and imperfect, and probably too ambitious, but it's about people searching for who they are beneath the masks they wear." Vincent's breath caught. The words landed like a mirror held up to his soul. The next morning, Vincent woke to chaos. His face angled toward Luna's across a flickering candlelit table was plastered on half a dozen gossip sites. Sterling's Secret Romance, one headline screamed. Billionaire's Mystery Woman, another blared, accompanied by grainy paparazzi shots taken through the restaurant window. By the time he silenced his phone, 20 missed calls and a storm of emails had piled up from his publicist, from his board members, from investors who saw every headline as a reflection of market stability. But the most persistent name flashing across his screen was Vanessa. He finally answered. "Vincent, darling." Her voice was cool, every syllable sharpened to glass. "I'm seeing some very interesting photos online. Should I be concerned?" Vincent pinched the bridge of his nose. "Vanessa, we should talk." "Yes, we should. I'll be at your office in an hour." The confrontation was brutal in its civility. Vanessa swept into his office like she owned it, her elegance razor-sharp, not a strand of hair out of place. She sat across from him, legs crossed, hands resting lightly in her lap. A queen in exile, waiting for a verdict. "I won't make a scene," she said finally, her tone precise, controlled, "but I need to know where this leaves us." Vincent looked at Hertha, perfect companion for a life he was beginning to shed. Beautiful, intelligent, sophisticated. Everything that matched the image the world expected him to project. And yet, "I'm sorry, Vanessa," he said quietly. "You deserve honesty. I'm falling for someone else. And it wouldn't be fair to either of us to continue this." A flicker of something hurt, pride, maybe even relief, crossed her face before the mask slid back into place. "I see." She stood smoothly, adjusting the cuff of her tailored blazer. "I hope she's worth it, Vincent. And I hope you know what you're doing, because if you don't, this city will eat you alive." With that, she was gone. Vincent sat back, the silence of his office suddenly deafening. For years, he had lived by rules that made sense in Vanessa's world: image, alliances, strategy. But with one decision, he had broken them all. The cost of choosing Luna had just begun to reveal itself. Vincent smiled, not the polished media smile, Not the one crafted for magazine covers, but something smaller, uncertain, human, than I'd rather be that lost, confused guy with you, he said softly, than keep living as a polished lie for everyone else. Luna's amber eyes held him in place. She didn't flinch, didn't soften. She simply studied him, as if weighing the substance of his words against the glittering image the world knew. You make it sound so simple, she murmured, arms folding across her paint-streaked sweater. But your life isn't simple. Your face is on billboards. Your company is in headlines. The moment you walked into this bookstore, you brought all of that crashing into my world. Vincent exhaled, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair until it fell messily across his forehead. I know. And I hate that you've been pulled into it. But Luna, his voice cracked, just slightly, that world doesn't make me feel alive. You do. Silence stretched. Outside her window, the hum of traffic floated up from the street. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee grounds, acrylic paint, and basil from the plants lining her. Shelves. Finally, Luna leaned against the doorframe, her expression softer but still cautious. If I let you into my life, Vincent, I can't be your secret escape. I won't be a detour before you go back to being the untouchable billionaire. You won't be, he said instantly, stepping closer. His voice carried none of the confidence he used in boardrooms, only raw urgency. I don't want an escape. I want a beginning. Her lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to believe him but feared the cost. She shook her head and gave a half laugh. You really don't know who you are yet, do you? No, Vincent admitted. But for the first time in my life, I want to find out. And I want to find out with you. The honesty disarmed her. Luna looked away, biting her lower lip. You have no idea how much of a mess this could be. Vincent reached out, not to grab her, not to claim her, but to gently take her paint-streaked hand in his. Maybe mess is exactly what I need. For the first time that day, Luna smiled. Not a wide grin, not surrender, but the smallest flicker of possibility. And for the first time in their conversations, the smile reached his eyes completely. Then I guess I'll be lost and confused with someone who makes incredible coffee and asks the right questions. Luna hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. Her apartment smelled faintly of turpentine and basil. Canvases leaned against every wall, colors spilling across them in wild, unrestrained strokes. I've been painting, she said, gesturing toward the chaos. It helps me think. Vincent walked slowly, studying the canvases. Abstract shapes, bold hues, emotions captured in paint he didn't have words for. These are extraordinary. They're just feelings made visible, Luna replied, curling up cross-legged on her couch. What I do when words aren't enough. Vincent sat beside her, careful of the wet paint on the cushions and coffee table. His voice was steady, deliberate. I broke up with Vanessa because of the photos, because of you, because she represents everything I used to think I wanted. And you represent everything I'm discovering I actually need. Luna was quiet for a long time. The ticking of a clock filled the space between them. Finally, she said, Vincent, I care about you, but I won't be your project, your experiment to prove you can change. If we do this, it has to be real. What would real look like? He asked. It would mean no more performances. It would mean you stop measuring your worth by headlines and bank accounts. It would mean being willing to be ordinary sometimes. Vincent thought about his life, the endless boardrooms, the magazine profiles, the applause that always rang hollow, the accomplishments that dissolved, the moment the spotlight moved on. He exhaled, slow and heavy. "I want to try," he said. "I want to learn how to be real." Luna's expression softened, the faintest hope breaking through her guardedness. "Then let's start small. I'll finish this painting, and you can tell me the last time you created something just because it made you happy." 6 months later, the business press reeled as Vincent Sterling stood at a podium in a modest conference hall, not a gilded ballroom. His tailored suit looked the same, but his voice carried a different weight. "I'm stepping back from day-to-day operations at Sterling Tech," he announced. "I'll be devoting my time to the newly formed Sterling Foundation for Literary Arts, a non-profit dedicated to supporting independent bookstores and emerging writers." Reporters scrambled to type. Analysts called it reckless. Columnists labeled it a vanity project, a midlife crisis, even a publicity stunt. The board bristled till they saw the foundation's first initiative, a program offering to small businesses in underserved neighborhoods, bookstores, cafes, community art spaces, real people, real lives. The photos of Vincent that surfaced afterward were different, too. Not gala shots with champagne flutes, but images of him standing in a crowded indie bookstore, listening intently to a young poet reading her first work aloud, Luna at his side, smiling as if she'd always known this man was waiting underneath. Starting with independent bookstores, Luna's debut novel was published by a small press and quickly won critical acclaim for its magical realism and unflinching honesty. She used her advance to expand pages and dreams, adding a workshop space in the back room where aspiring writers gathered to shape their stories. Vincent still lived in his penthouse, but it no longer resembled a showroom. Books spilled from the shelves, canvases leaned against the walls. The kitchen smelled of simple meals he had learned to cook himself. It was no longer a stage, it was a home. On Tuesday evenings, Luna taught her workshop while Vincent helped. Nervous first-time writers wrestle with their opening chapters. He discovered he loved the patience, the encouragement, the shared victories when someone finally found the perfect sentence. And one night, watching Luna's face light up as she guided a young poet toward the right word, he realized he could finally answer the question that had once haunted him. "Are you happy?" "Yes," he thought. "For the first time in my adult life, yes." The transformation wasn't complete. He still slipped into old habits, still caught himself performing instead of being fully present. But now, with Luna beside him, masking the questions that mattered, celebrating every small step forward, he understood that happiness wasn't something to conquer or acquire. It was something to practice, one genuine, imperfect moment at a time. In the end, the billionaire CEO who had once measured his life in stock prices and magazine covers discovered something wealth could never. By a love built on truth, a partnership that demanded growth, and the radical realization that his worth was not in his empire, but in his willingness to live honestly, vulnerably, and completely alive.